what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, welcome to, Footcandle Films. I'm Alan, and over here's Chris. And if you guys excuse me, we just got out of a screening of a movie that we're going to talk about in a minute called Chef, and I didn't have any food beforehand. Oh, man. And it made me very, very hungry. So I'm not quite eating the gourmet food that we saw in the film. It's just McDonald's French fries right now. But the idea is I needed to eat after seeing that film. But as I said, I am Alan. This is Chris. We're here to talk about some films and movies. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. And fortunately, I did eat before.
I was going to say, because you don't seem hungry at all right now.
No.
But I'm starving. So I'm going to snack a little bit while we get set up for our show today, which will be reviews of, like I just said, the film Chef, starring Jon Favreau and a whole slew of Hollywood big hitters. Then we're also going to follow that up with a review of the documentary about Roger Ebert's life called Life Itself. We'll move on to some movie news, some headlines we want to gossip about a little bit, and then finish up the show with our recommendations of films we think you ought to check out, either ones that we just have enjoyed in the past or maybe even more recently that we think are worth checking out if you have not before. This is Footcandle Films, which is part of the Footcandle Film Society here in Western North Carolina, where we put together some interesting film screenings for the local community, and then we get together on this podcast to talk about those films along with many, many others. This is also part of the Mesh.tv network. So what you're listening to is part of the Mesh.tv. We encourage you to go check us out online at the Mesh.tv. You can listen to all of our back episodes, our library, as you will, Chris, our whole repertoire of past episodes from the past several years.
I believe we have like 68 past episodes.
No way.
Yes. This is episode 69, almost to 70.
I mean, it doesn't seem like we've done more than 62, so I don't know if that's correct or not. But anyway, we do want you to go check us out on themesh.tv along with all the other shows on the podcast network. So with all that set up out of the way, Chris, let's go ahead and get into our first review, which as we play the trailer, give me another few seconds to eat some more of these delicious McDonald's French fries.
And you didn't get an apple pie for me to try.
Oh, no, I didn't. I'm sorry about that. As we get into our first review of Jon Favreau's Chef.
We're being reviewed by the most important critic in the city.
Now suddenly you're going to be an artist. Well, be an artist on your own time. It's my restaurant.
The kitchen is my domain. That was our deal.
The deal has now changed. Either you stay or you go.
So you're threatening to fire me now?
No, I'm telling you what I'm prepared to do if you don't cook my menu.
You're never going to be happy cooking for someone else.
So what are you going to do? You're going to laugh. Tony, Carl's got a taco truck.
For real?
I get to touch people's lives with what I do, and I love it.
Director and writer Jon Favreau. He gave us Swingers back in, I don't know, that was a while ago.
I think it was like mid-90s.
Okay.
Maybe,
take that.
Yeah.
So he did that, and then after that he I think he did Made as well, and then he kind of disappeared in as far as like the directing, writing.
If I can just interrupt, he wrote Swingers and starred in Swingers. He did not direct it.
Okay.
No.
That's
but
a good distinction.
Pretty close. Yeah, he did direct Made in Zathura, which was a kind of like a Jumanji light
except it was
version.
space this
Yes,
time or
that's
whatever.
correct.
Okay. So then he was director of the first two Iron Men, and he was actually in all three Iron Men as playing like the side.
Happy Hogan.
Yeah, okay. Happy Hogan. Love that name. So now
I'm letting my geek flag fly once again.
That's all right. So now he's returned to directing and writing with a comedy, Chef. And as you may gather from the title and what Alan's little intro there, it's about a chef who works at a really fancy restaurant, but then he runs up against the man.
Yes.
Played in this movie by Dustin Hoffman.
Well, as one of the man, and then you have another man played by Oliver Platt, who's
That's
also,
true. That's true. The movie
several people forcing him down.
That's right. The reviewer, the restaurant reviewer. So he kind of runs into some problems, and then he walks off and he says, forget this. I'm going to start a new direction. And he ends up running a food truck.
A food truck.
Which, that's an interesting direction for a gourmet chef to then turn from doing this. So, Alan, you've had a break from Mr. Favreau as a director-writer and actor, as well as far as, him doing a comedy.
Right.
He hasn't been center focus. He returns, and he is the central chef character.
Yes.
Do you feel like him returning as a central figure in a movie, writing and directing it, do you think he warrants that, or do you think he should have let somebody else do? Do you think he's okay wearing all three hats, a chef's hat in this movie, all three hats, 4 hats with chef's hat? Do you think he's okay with it, or do you think he should have maybe delegated some responsibilities?
I am okay with what he did with this film in all of his parts. I make no mistake about it. Chef is predictable,
Okay.
cliche ridden, not a lot of depth to it, pretty on the nose with a lot of scenes.
Wow.
But I will say, damn you, Mr. Favreau. You made it work. I enjoyed this film. Yes, I knew exactly where it was going to go, but darn it, it was a fun film. I did have a good time with this.
Okay.
I do have some misgivings, which we can talk about in a moment, but I will say in general, I had a smile on my face a good part of the film. I laughed at the right places. And yeah, it worked. I mean, it was a fun movie. And I will say that it's nice to kind of have a light film that didn't try to take itself too seriously, didn't try to throw any major dramatic curveballs your way. It kept it at a very light, high level. And I thought that really worked. It's filled with tons of, you could say cameos, because some of the parts are really one scene from some big actors, big actresses. Sometimes they felt a little forced, almost like, hey, I want to get my buddies in here and I'm going to get them apart. But, overall, I was okay with it because it just seemed like everybody was having a fun time making this film.
Okay.
So even though I've got some misgivings, we can go to those in a little bit, some little quibbles I want to point out, some things I don't think worked as well. I'm going to say overall, though, I had a really good time with this film. How about you?
It's a comedy, sensibly it's a comedy. So did it make me laugh? Yes. And did I laugh enough? Yes. And I appreciated that some of the humor, too, wasn't your, I guess, slapstick type humor. It was a little higher level, maybe, So that appealed to me, that it wasn't just the movie we reviewed recently, A Million Ways to Die in the West. Yes, that's basically both of our responses to that movie. It had some funny moments, but it just irritated me overall. That type of comedy was not my bag, so to speak.
Well,
this type of comedy is much more along the lines of...
Well, but even if it's not your bag necessarily.
Sure.
I think with comedy, you have to kind of make a conscious decision of which direction you're going to go with the style of humor.
Agreed.
Are you going to go the Zemeckis Brothers, Airplane, Top Secret, Naked Gun route, where it's slapstick, it's over-the-top humor, it's, a lot of self-referential humor?
Right.
Or are you going to go the more natural humor route?
Right.
Which is what Chef was. Chef was natural humor. It's guys ribbing on each other. It's funny situations, reacting to those situations. It was a natural humor film, and I think it worked really well for that.
I would agree. I think for also a big important part of this movie for me was the fact that how the food looked. Mm-hmm. And also the preparation steps they took in making it. To me, it just seemed very believable.
Yeah.
To the part where I was wondering, I still am actually, how much cooking Jon Favreau has ever done in his life.
Yeah.
And, if he doesn't do a lot of cooking ever, then that makes maybe that much more impressive to me. But even the amount of research to walk into a cooking store at one point and he's like making decisions about things to get, and it just seems very natural.
Yes.
Now, granted, to somebody, I don't own a restaurant, but it just seems, I don't know, it just felt very natural. And then that helped the comedic elements just kind of fall in and just seem. And I'll say this too, you mentioned some of the cameos that were there. And a lot of times I'm very harsh on that because I feel like they're forced.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like, you do have Dustin Hoffman, you do have Robert Downey Jr., Oliver Platt,
Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson, yeah. And I just never felt like they were forced. Now, granted, one of his assistants or his he's the lead chef, and the other guys, I don't know all these terms, sous chef.
You got a sous chef, and then you got a
something else.
Yeah, I think a line cook, but and the line cook was played by
John Leguizamo.
John Leguizamo, he got promoted to sous chef later on, but Bobby Carnival was the one who did get promoted to sous chef pretty quickly.
He was an example of somebody who I really like. I've seen him in The Station Agent, and he's played like smaller parts. And here I was really excited to see him, and I thought he did a really good job. But then about a third of the way through the movie, he drops off.
Well, that happened with a lot of characters in the film. Scarlett Johansson is in the movie until maybe about the 1/3 or one halfway point, and she's gone.
Right.
Dustin Hoffman's gone early on. Of course, his plot line pretty much ends early on.
You understand why that one, yeah.
Really only a couple characters kind of make a callback later on in the film. And I don't want to say the cameos were forced because I do think they were fun. I think most all of them worked.
Yeah, I think they did.
It's just, it's Robert Downey Jr. playing Robert Downey Jr. exaggerated caricature, but it was a fun scene. And I'm glad that it didn't go on too long. It was really like a 6-minute scene and that's it. It's done. Dustin Hoffman played a very believable, I don't even say a villain. I mean, he was the antagonist early in the film, but it was a very natural relationship he had as the owner of the restaurant with Jon Favreau's chef.
Right.
I think they did a pretty good job of not painting somebody as a caricature in any sense. Robert Downey Jr. probably got the most caricaturous role, but again, his was very brief, a good little comedic bit in the middle of the film, and then it was done.
He is playing the ex-husband to Jon Favreau's ex-wife.
Yes.
So it's but they could have stereotypically done in one way, but he ends up helping out Jon Favreau.
Oh, yeah,
which
sure.
is, kind of an interesting, nice thing to do.
There again, I'm willing to give this film a lot of passes because I did have such a good time watching it. It was funny. The music was good. I agree with you. The cinematography and the way that the cooking scenes were all done and the way they weaved in a very realistic approach to running a restaurant, being a chef, kind of those passions, I thought were all really well done. A few little quibbles, again, some points, some things I didn't think worked as well.
Okay.
I thought some plot points were very contrived, I think.
Such as
having the John Leguizamo character just miraculously show up exactly at the right time and spot by taxi.
Okay.
Which was kind of a forced plot. They needed him to get there all the way across the country.
But they addressed it.
They did, but it sounded like something.
If they just didn't address it. He actually said, wow, you must have gotten right off the phone and hopped on a plane. Like, they at least bothered to address that.
I think that was more a matter of, we have to throw in a line to explain how we just got you here across country.
They bothered to.
Yeah, that's better than some films do. Right. I will give it that much. I thought the ending, which we're not going to explain the ending, but I thought the ending was a little too pat, a little too buttoned up. It gives you the little 6 months later thing, which I'm never a huge fan of in films. And I thought this one was almost too cliche perfect.
I will concede that I think that was a little
too much. I would have been okay with a little more ambiguous ending. Not that I wanted it to be a cliffhanger or a downer ending. You kind of had a sense towards the end of the film where things were going to go, and you felt good about it. I don't think we needed that 6 months later coda to show just how perfect things were now all of a sudden.
Sure, I would agree. It's kind of like they're going to be a family film with F-bombs.
Right.
Like the way they tied it up, it was just like, it wasn't just a comedy at that point. It's like, we're going to make it a family film that happens to have a lot of F-bombs.
Yeah. That's my only misgivings of it. I thought otherwise it was really good. There were a few places where I thought the editing was a little choppy in scenes. It just kind of abruptly ended a scene and went to a very diverse scene, like kind of abruptly. And if it was a conscious decision, I think it was an interesting one. I kind of feel like it was more... I feel like there was a lot longer scenes and a lot longer subplots, but when they realized their film was already at 1 hour, 50 minutes, they kind of had to get some stuff cut down. So I felt like some subplots didn't have as much room to breathe, but I felt like that was more just, we got to get this down under 2 hours. It's a comedy. It can't be over 2 hours long.
Right. I didn't really notice any of the choppiness. I did notice some subplots drop off, but it didn't really bother me.
Yeah.
And for a comedy to almost be 2 hours, I didn't feel it. I felt like it
moved pretty brisk. Yeah.
I'll say the only negative that I have on the film, you mentioned, I had two. One was the whole neat tied up in a bow at the end. But other than that, I think social media was a little bit overdone. It's important to the storyline, but at some point they could have kind of let it. It's important the story, it's important to the storyline because it helps him become popular and helps his business take off.
Well,
okay, fine. But then once it was doing okay, I think they could have let it drop, but they kept kind of hitting it a little heavy to the point where I think Twitter should have been paid for a promotional consideration.
Well,
or
no.
Twitter should have paid them.
I do like the way they incorporated social media into the discussion, and I think it actually did more than just give the film show how they utilize that for marketing. I think it was the connection between the father and the son.
It's
true. It was something to bond on. Where I do agree, I don't agree with you that it was overused social media. What I do agree, though, is on Twitter, the visual motif they did whenever somebody was posting a Twitter post was cute the first time, but then they use it about 4 or 5 more times in the film, and it just got a little overdone. That, I do agree with you on that. But I thought the concept of social media, even Vine videos and these 1-second videos his son's taking throughout the film, I thought all that worked together really well. It was just the little, every time you saw a line of people waiting for the food truck, and everybody's doing the little Twitter thing and everybody's got the thing over their head. That's a little much. It just got a little redundant after a while.
I would agree.
For such a good naturalistic film to throw in this little special effect type of thing just seemed a little odd.
I thought, I'll say I'm going to throw out a positive that we have not touched on that I want to touch on because for me, it's pretty pivotal in the film. His son, whose character name was Percy, but it's played by MJ Anthony, I thought he was really good.
I agree.
And in a movie where you're doing father-son dynamics, especially for a younger son, I think we can look at like Phantom Menace, and you can see how sometimes that can derail a movie, having a young actor try to play a pretty pivotal role. And in this movie, he's good, and he doesn't overdo it. He's not trying to like overact or anything. He just, there again, it goes back to being very natural. And I thought he did a really good job.
I completely agree. And you and I both being the fathers of boys similar in age to the character in the film, I can attest to the fact it was a very realistic portrayal of a kid that age, especially one who's so into social media and technology, which is very much the case with a lot of kids that age. No, it was a great performance by that young actor. I'd be curious to see if he actually is developing as an actor or if this is just one of those, he just happened to be somebody that the crew knew and did a one-off job on it or not. So it'd be fun to see. Yeah, overall, I had a great time with the film. I thought it was a lot of fun. I've seen it twice now, so I can attest to that. It's still fun even on a second viewing. A couple little misgivings I think that could have been tidied up with the story and the ending and some other things I thought were a little too contrived. But, when you have a good time with a film and you laugh and you enjoy the characters and you want to spend more time with them, you give a pass to that film on any of the little more minor issues it may have,
So to round it out, one of the things we're trying to do now is give it a letterbox score. So from 1 to 5 stars, Alan, what would you give Chef?
Man, I may be batting this one close to a 4, because I had a good time with it. 4 to me is a good, solid, fun, enjoyable film. Okay. So I'm going to give it a 4.
Okay. I think I'd rate it... I don't know if I can go 4, but definitely 3.5.
Yeah, so I was debating 4 to 3.5, but I'm after a second viewing. The one thing, going back to your initial question of how did Jon Favreau do, I think as a director he did fine. I think as a writer he did fine. I did really like his character.
I did too.
I thought I've never been a huge fan of him as an actor, but I think this is a role that he nailed. I
do too, and I hope that now that he's gotten, I assume he took some of the money that came out of Iron Man
money,
movies,
yes.
And this was kind of like a pet project for him. I hope he kind of continues to do smaller independent films because I think he's a good writer and he's, a good director. So
now he may have spent all that Iron Man movie on Cowboys and Aliens.
I never did see that.
I didn't either. I think there's a reason why that happened. Anyway. Well, Jon Favreau, please stick with the smaller movies. I think that's where we like you right now. So that's where you need to be. I'm sure you're listening. Please take note. Call us if you need any more career advice. So that's Chef, limited release film, not getting a huge exposure, not getting a huge wide release, I don't think anytime soon. But we do encourage you to check it out. It's a lot of fun. Good film by Jon Favreau and a whole cast of well-known actors that you kind of have fun picking out throughout the film. All right, so we're going to move on to our next review, which is a very different film, a documentary. Is about the life of the film critic that we all know. And honestly, it's probably had a little bit of an inspiration even to what we're doing here in this show. Roger Ebert, and the documentary is Life Itself.
Roger Ebert was the definitive mainstream film critic in American cinema.
He has been writing for half of the history of feature films. Roger was a mature writer early on.
He's written over a dozen books.
He wrote a novel.
He won a Pulitzer Prize.
Roger was a good addition, but he also could take it.
He is a nice guy, but he's not that nice.
It's Thriller Week on Siskel and Ebert in the movies, and we've got 3 new ones.
Sound a little excited, Jane.
Sound less excited, Roger.
So, Chris, we both recently saw the documentary Life Itself,
yes,
which is based on the biography of Roger Ebert. Mm-hmm. It was a memoir that Roger Ebert wrote. Steve James, who is a very well-known documentary filmmaker, started out with Hoop Dreams many years ago. Hoop Dreams being a film that Roger Ebert was a huge champion of.
Sure.
So I think he and Steve James really kind of got a nice friendship relationship going after that.
And
where
Steve James is also a Chicago person.
He is a Chicagoan, so they have the Chicago connection. Plus, I think Roger really championed Hoop Dreams and got it a lot of national attention for being the great documentary it was. So he really kind of helped launch Steve James' career. Here we have a film that is talking about the life of Roger Ebert, but it also is really more set in the contemporary setting of his last really several months of life. He did pass away just not too long ago, within the last year here. And this film was being started while he was still alive. He had been going through a lot of cancer treatments. He had had jaw removed. He just lost his ability to speak over the last several years of his life. So Steve James, I kind of felt like, was making a film to kind of pay Roger back for being such a champion of his. Okay. It's like, I want to do something that puts a spotlight on Roger and really shares the world the story of what I know to be a really fascinating person and to talk about his life. So knowing that, and knowing that you and I get together every couple of weeks and we review films.
Sure.
It's a format that I don't know if we'd be doing this podcast the way we'd be doing it if Siskel and Ebert, didn't do what they did so many years ago and really popularize the idea of film criticism. Mm-hmm. So knowing how important Roger Ebert's career was to even our life in a film society, in a film podcast here, and knowing that it looks like Steve James was really trying to do Roger Ebert, pay him the honor he felt like he deserved by making this film, my answer to the question to you is, did this film do for Roger Ebert's life what you felt like it did? In other words, did it live up to what it needed to for Roger Ebert's life?
I think if Roger Ebert would be able to watch this movie, I think he would give it he would only give it 1 thumbs up. The other reviewer would have to give it another.
Right.
But no, I think he would be completely happy with it.
You think so?
I think it did the legacy of Robert Ebert justice, or Roger.
Yes.
Let's give him correct legacy. But Roger Ebert justice. And I think that one of the things that Steve James, the director, definitely gets right is that he doesn't put Ebert on a pedestal.
You're right.
It shows, in his younger days, he could be a bit of a braggart. He could be very abrasive. It shows outtakes of the Siskel and Ebert show with he and Gene Siskel going at each other pretty ruthlessly. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't shy away from that. And it's not Gene Siskel's fault. Gene Siskel has also had an ego, but it shows you the rough sides of these people. And even when he was sick and he is trying to return home, and it shows you him as a debilitated person and some of his stubbornness, and they didn't shy away from that.
Right.
And going into the movie, I expected, a documentary about Roger Ebert. What I didn't expect was kind of a glimpse into his final days. And that really took me aback, and I thought it was really impressive and kind of I don't know of any. It was kind of a new type of documentary in a way for me, because you see documentaries on people's lives, but very rarely do you see the person aware that they are about to die and you're reflecting back on their life.
It's a little self-referential because Roger Ebert knew that Steve James was making a documentary about his life. But I think Roger probably knew that there's a really good chance, almost 100% chance, he was never going to see this film.
Yes.
Yeah. This is interesting.
Yeah. So I to answer your question, I think Roger would be, I think it does do his legacy justice. So how are you?
No, I agree. I liked the film better than I expected to.
Okay.
Mainly because I was happy that they showed, I think the framing that they put in place of all the happening now scenes taking place in the hospital room, basically. And as shocking as some of those scenes were, I mean, those of you who have seen Roger Ebert in his later years, after he had had the jaw reconstruction and just, he looks very different.
Yes.
And it's somewhat uncomfortable to look at. Well, this film does not shy away from that. There's actually a couple scenes that are downright really tough to watch, of him in the hospital room being tended to, being fed through a tube.
So that he can breathe and stuff like that.
It was tough. It was a very tough watch. I agree with you. I think it did an interesting job of being more of a commentary on dealing with what you know is coming at the end of your life. Because all along, we're watching somebody in Roger Ebert, at least the last several years, especially after he got married. I think the film really paints a good picture of him getting married changed him.
Right.
Where he had some good qualities and traits down deep in him. I think him getting married, and what the film really showed is when he got married and actually found a partner and found a greater purpose in life, is when he was able to let those really positive qualities of him be much more front and center.
I agree.
And so I think the film did a good job of showing that. Not to say that, somebody's got to get married to be happy or whatever.
No.
It's just I think he needed somebody as his support.
Right.
And I think in a way he kind of saw Gene Siskel as a little bit of that, almost like the big brother adversarial thing. And when that was gone, I think that really sharpened his focus too, to say, you know what, I've got more to give back to this world on a positive nature. The scenes of him and his grandkids, which granted, he didn't have any natural children of his own.
Right.
He adopted basically his Chaz, his wife, when they got married, adopted her kids, and her kids had kids. So all of a sudden he had step grandkids. And the scenes of him interacting with them and taking walks in the park and just that camaraderie with even his youngest grandson, that to me showed me that Roger Ebert became a different person than maybe what we saw as the guy hanging out at the bar, telling the stories and getting these philosophical conversations. This is now a man who was giving back. And I thought that was just a really nice way to frame the film. One area I wish they had gone into a little more detail of is I never from the film got the best sense of what exactly about film and movies drew Roger Ebert to that medium. Because he started out as a newspaper writer, and we learned a lot about his passion for newspaper writing. But then it was kind of like, and then he became a film critic. Like, okay, that seems kind of odd. It was just a gap there. Now I've read about Roger Ebert. I know a lot more of his story. I know what drove him to film, and I know his passion for film. That's just the one area of the documentary I don't think they dug into as much as they should. Other than that, though, it was a very comprehensive film. I think it covered all the aspects of his life it should have covered. And I think my wife said it best when I was talking to her at lunch and we had watched the film together. She said, growing up, that when you watched the Siskel and Ebert show, you always kind of thought Ebert was the kind of the pompous little self-arrogant guy, where Gene Siskel was like the really nice, pleasant person to be around.
Right.
And it's not to say that we learn from this film that actually they're kind of swapped, because I don't think Gene Siskel was a bad person.
They had a role to play.
But I do think you really come out of this saying, wow, okay, so the Roger Ebert I was seeing on TV, yes, he was arrogant, he seemed a little smarmy, but down deep, he was a good person.
Absolutely.
And he cared about the lesser man. He cared about the people that were downtrodden. He was very big on civil rights. He was very, very big on equality. And all these things really, I think the film did a good job of showing that.
I would agree. I enjoyed seeing, of course, when you do a movie about a film critic, you're going to show some directors. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed seeing Werner Herzog, Errol Morris, Martin Scorsese. I would have liked to see more of maybe Herzog and Morris, because they showed a lot of Martin Scorsese, but he was one of the producers of the executive producers of the film, so he was in there a lot. But it was interesting to see them comment on this person who had commented on their work. And actually, that was one of my favorite parts with Martin Scorsese is he commented on Ebert's review of Color of Money. And Ebert was not high on that movie.
Yeah, right.
But Scorsese made an interesting comment. He said, he kind of paraphrased the review, and basically he took it as he didn't just tear him down. He said, I expect more of him. Yeah. I expect more of Scorsese.
You've got to make this up, next time.
Scorsese was like, it wasn't just like he was tearing me down. He was giving me encouragement, saying, you can do better.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really interesting.
Well, and we had Barani.
Amin Barani.
Barani, which, a little bit of a local connection in North Carolina School of the Arts graduate, and we've actually shown one of his films in our film society.
Right.
I didn't really know there was a connection as much with he and Roger Ebert, but he actually was in the film quite a bit and visited Roger in the hospital in the last several months there. So I enjoyed that too. I was afraid, honestly, for a while that the film was just going to be as many people talking as glowingly as possible about Roger.
Okay.
That's really what I feared going into this, is it's just going to be one big eulogy.
Right.
A lot of stories about how great he was. I echo what you said at the beginning. I think the fact that they didn't whitewash everything.
No, they didn't.
I think, and there were times where, you kind of got the sense Roger was a troubled guy at times. He was an alcoholic. Supposedly he had some interesting relationships with women early on in his career.
Absolutely.
He was very insecure in a way. And I think all that came about, and we saw that in the film, and it didn't shy away. And then, of course, the naked emotion of just seeing him in that hospital room being cared for. It's not a flattering picture.
No.
But it's obviously one that Roger wanted, and I think he definitely wanted that to be part of the film.
And I think I will say that my only negatives for the film, and I have it listed kind of, I didn't specify down to why Roger chose film. I hadn't even thought about that actually. Mm-hmm. But at one point, they do kind of an interesting use of technology, kind of like Chef, where they show instant messages or like text messages back and forth between him, between Steve James, the director, and Roger Ebert, saying like, hey, I was going to come to your house tomorrow. I was going to ask you this, this, and this, kind of setting up different interview times. And one of the things that really killed me, and it's a negative because he actually bullet pointed like 3 or 4 questions, and and Roger just texted back. This was towards the end. He's like, I can't.
I'm having a bad day.
And it was just like, that was so devastating. It was, and you want some of those questions, you're like, I want to hear more about that, and it was frustrating because,
Well, in a way, Steve James actually kind of made us feel just as frustrated as probably he was.
Right.
Where it's like, I've still got a lot of questions to ask. I still got a lot of information I need to know, but I'm not going to get them.
Right.
And it was a shame. Plus Chaz Ebert, who, I didn't know a lot about her, the wife of Roger Ebert, but man, she's a good person too. It seems like from the film.
I would agree, and I what really amazed me is it's one thing for Roger to want this film to be made, but Chaz had to be okay with it too, and it's pretty invasive. I mean, obviously, it's invasive into his life, but it's really invasive into her life too, and she let it happen, and I think it's just an amazing document time.
I think we're both on the same page that we really enjoyed this documentary. I only have the one misgiving with it, just one area that it was already a pretty long documentary. So again, it kind of like what we said with Chef, it's maybe one of those things where, they could have gone into more detail, but at some point you got to cut it loose. I wish they would have really give us a little insight as to why film became the passion for Roger, as opposed to newspaper writing, as opposed to any other art form.
Right.
And that was the one gap I felt like we just had there. So
well, and it was just, I hadn't even thought about it. I was so overwhelmed with this movie. And there again, it shows you how on board I was with it because I didn't even notice, running time or anything. So I'll say my Letterboxd score for this is going to be 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going 4.5. Okay. So I'm pretty close. Not perfect film, but a really, really, really good documentary. So, okay, man, we've got 2 good films so far. Chef, Life Itself. Life Itself is available on iTunes and other streaming services, so you definitely need to check it out online because it's not playing at many places, so it'd probably be a little hard to find right now. But yeah, we definitely say check it out.
Now, I haven't seen any extra films, but Alan, I believe you did make it to see How to Train Your Dragon 2.
Yes, dos. I did see How to Train Your Dragon. We'll throw this as a little bonus. I like dragons. It's just, it's just me. I like dragons. I like the time period that supposedly dragons would have taken place in medieval times and some of that. So the first How to Train Your Dragon, I went in with trepidation because I don't know, animated kid films that are not Pixar, you really got to win me over. You really got to be a good film. And How to Train Your Dragon, the first one, was a good film. It was a really good film. I enjoyed it. So I was excited about the second one, and I really liked the second one. I like the second one better than the first one.
Really?
It's a good sequel. And it's also, it has stakes. It's hits the right emotional
Does it
points.
have A1 sauce? Just steak.
Just steak, yes. Has steak,
all
no
about
sauce,
food. It's
just
all
steak.
about
Right?
food,
Yeah,
so.
we're also carrying on my food as my chicken snack wrap sits here staring me in the face. I don't have to eat during the break here. It's a really good movie. The animation is great. I mean, it's to the point now where I don't think you can really look at these animated films and say, oh, the animation was amazing. I mean, they're all kind of hitting at the same level.
Okay.
So then it all boils down to story. Does the story hold up? You don't go to see these films anymore because you want to see the incredible animation. You go because you want to see a good story. And I think this one had a really good story. I know, Chris, that you are not a fan of Mr. Jay Baruchel.
I am not.
Because we talked about that at length during the review of This Is the End. Yeah. His voice is no less grating in this film than it has been in other films. It's a little better than it was in How to Train Your Dragon, the first one, because he's playing a older character now. He's few years older, so he can mature his voice a little bit. But other than that, the voice acting is great across the board. Everybody else. You've got, and I'm already drawing a blank on the names. Cate Blanchett does his mother.
Okay.
His mother's a new character they introduced back into the film. And who's the guy that does the late night talk show? He's English.
Ferguson?
Craig Ferguson is in it as I don't remember his name. I'm really bad with names here on this film, but the voice acting is really good.
Okay.
I saw it phrased at one point as kind of being the Empire Strikes Back of the trilogy.
Really?
Which, now, granted, that's saying a lot to
high
it.
Praise.
But it didn't quite go that far, in that it didn't create this real ominous mood and leave you on kind of a dark space. But it did have some very darker, sadder moments. So it definitely did beat down the story a little bit more. It was not quite as upbeat as the first one might have been. A little more downtrodden here at times. I definitely think they're setting up for a future one. It was pretty obvious from the film. But it's a good movie. I had a really good time. The kids really enjoyed it as well.
So I have not seen this movie, but I cannot tell you how many times I've seen the preview.
Yeah.
So there's enough left for me in this movie, so don't be discouraged just by it looks like. Okay.
Yes. There's actually, I will go ahead and say, there is a scene towards the end, kind of the big climactic scene.
Okay.
That is as close as you can get nowadays in the theater to a stand-up and cheer scene and moment, which if you like the characters in this series so far, and especially the dragon, and I'm forgetting his name too. I really am bad with names tonight. What is it? I haven't.
There's the one that he befriended in the first movie.
Yeah, Toothless.
Okay.
Toothless, the little black dragon.
Yes.
He has a moment at the end that is just a cheer, happy.
Way to go, Toothless.
Way to go. Okay. And it's a really good movie. I highly encourage it. Hey, you could do a lot worse. It is, I'm sure, 100 times better than whatever Transformers number we're up to now that you and I are still refusing to go see in the movie theater. So
That's right.
Definitely say How to Train Your Dragon 2. A lot of fun to go check out.
Okay, cool.
With that, we're done with the reviews for a little bit. Let's move on to some movie news after the break, and then we'll also cap off the show with our recommendation of a film we think you ought to check out. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Footcandle Films.
We'll get back to your show in a moment. Just a reminder, you're listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Find out more at themesh.tv and give us feedback on what you like. And now, as promised, back to your show.
Welcome back to Footcandle Films. First half of the show, we reviewed the film Chef, and we reviewed the film Life Itself, the documentary about Roger Ebert. Positive reviews on both films from both of us. Now let's move on to the next part of the show where we want to talk a little bit about some movie news. And by this, we're not going too deep into the gossip mill. We don't really care about who's dating who's doing whatever with who. We really want to talk about films that are either being made, ones that are being considered, ones that may be coming down the horizon. Chris, I know for the first 60 plus episodes of our show, I've kind of consumed the news headlines and just asked you to respond to them. The last couple episodes, I'll tell you,
I've come up with some.
You've stepped it up, man. You've stepped it up. You've come up with some news articles. So I understand you've got a couple more to share with us. I'm going to let you take the center stage right now.
Okay.
What do you got to
enough.
share?
Okay, so Bill Murray has a movie coming out in October.
Yes.
Last one that I really remember him having a major... He was in Grand Budapest Hotel, but Get Low was his last one that I really remember him being like center stage with Robert Duvall. Now,
you're right. Now, it wasn't a lead acting role.
That's true. He was supporting.
Technically, the last lead acting role, do you know what it was?
No.
The Man Who Knew Too Little. Do you remember that little spy spoof movie like all those years ago?
Really, really.
That was his last starring movie, like in person, not as an animated cat.
Now, was that after Steve Zissou, Life Aquatic, or no?
I think it was.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think so. Now, I could be wrong. Now, if not, maybe Steve Zissou was Life Aquatic was the last one.
Okay, well,
either way, it's been a long time.
It's been a while. Mm-hmm. Oh, Broken Flowers, Jim Jarmusch.
Oh, you're right. But that is more recent.
But he really, other than like Wes Anderson joints, he really kind of doesn't do a whole lot.
Yeah, sure.
Well, the new movie coming out is called St. Vincent, and it's coming out in October. And this is kind of a short little description. Bill Murray stars as a grumpy, often drunk, misfit neighbor who winds up looking after a new kid in the neighborhood and teaching him a variety of oddball life lessons, stick with me, such as how to break a man's nose. So, Alan, you look a little leery.
Well, if you took out the words Bill Murray from that description, I'd read that and say, ugh, that sounds horrible.
Right?
It sounds about as ridiculous cliche as you could possibly imagine. Now, you put Bill Murray in there, immediately my mind starts thinking, okay, is this the Bill Murray that is going to cash in a paycheck like he did with Garfield?
Well,
or is this the Bill Murray that has been doing some great Wes Anderson films and Jarmusch films and other films lately?
Okay. Also, this may help sway you a little bit. He's also got Naomi Watts and Chris O'Dowd.
Oh, okay, which I like both of them.
Okay. And then he also has Melissa McCarthy.
Who was that again? Could you say it a little louder?
Melissa McCarthy.
You don't like Melissa McCarthy?
I thought she was funny in Bridesmaids, and she's basically been doing the same thing ever since. And
True.
Tammy right now, you notice that's out in theaters, and we're not discussing it.
Yeah, I've heard some bad things about Tammy.
I think she has potential. I don't know if it's just... But she was the one who wrote Tammy, didn't she?
She wrote it, and her husband directed it.
Okay.
I think Melissa McCarthy is probably good in these supporting roles. I did not see Identity Theft, which she is a star in with Jason Bateman. I heard bad things about that one as well. But, did you see This Is 40?
No, I never did.
She has a small part in This Is 40, and she's funny.
Okay.
I thought she's funny in Bridesmaids. I think she's probably somebody is a good supporting character, a bit part character, not a lead actress. But
gotcha.
All right, so back to the question, though. You know what? Hey, I like Bill Murray. I'm willing to give him a shot. It's just the description you just read does not give me a whole lot of hope. Now, granted, you could take that description and do a really cool thing with it.
Right.
I look back at the film About a Boy, which was from years ago, which if you had read the description of About a Boy, yeah, I would have rolled my eyes and said, oh, that sounds horrible. And it was actually a really good movie because it had a lot more going than just, oh, I'm a hip young man and I'm befriending a little kid and we're helping each other out. It had a lot more going for it. I hope St. Vincent has a lot more going for it as well. So
agreed. I'm interested to see Bill Murray have a lead role again. So hopefully this will be worthwhile.
You know the story about him with the whole Garfield movie, right? The rumor about why he agreed to do Garfield, the voice of Garfield in that first movie.
Remind me? I think you told me, but it was off air.
So supposedly, and this is just everything you read on the internet. You don't know how true this is. And this could have been a story Bill Murray just made up. It actually sounds like something he would have just made up to try to give an excuse. Is that he was approached to be the voice of Garfield. And this is at a time where he was starting to shy away from big blockbuster stuff. He did the part of Bosley in the first Charlie's Angels remake movie.
Right.
And supposedly hated it. Got into fights with everybody on the set, and at that point said, "You know what? I'm done making these big budget movies. I don't want a part of it anymore." But then, not too long after that, he did Garfield. The story is that he only signed on to do Garfield because he saw that the writer of the script was an Ethan Coen. He thought it was Ethan Coen,
right?
One of the Coen brothers.
Wow.
So supposedly he signed on to be the lead voice for Garfield.
He's like, it's an animated cat movie, but it's done by one of the Coen brothers.
But it's one of the Coen brothers. Well, Coen was spelled the right way, but it's Eaton, E-T-A-N, Coen, who's not at all related to Joel and Ethan Coen. That was supposedly the reason he did Garfield. Now, that very well could just be a Bill Murray story he made up to say because it sounds funny and it gives him more of an out on why he made such a bad movie.
Right. Made two of them.
Yeah, man, I was going to say, the story doesn't really hold up because he did make the sequel. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to derail your story there. But I just always thought that was a funny one. So
the next news item I have is I've heard some details about Pixar's next film.
Okay.
It's coming out June 2015, and it's going to be called Inside Out.
Okay.
And I'll give you a little bit of a plot story so far. What they've vaguely released is that it's about an 11-year-old girl named Riley, who is basically, her family is moving to San Francisco, and I guess she's in the Midwest or something, and it's based on her emotions as she's going through this process of having to move.
Okay.
And it also, apparently, you're going to hear a lot of her internal dialogue, and she's going to have, and her like internal voices in her head are going to be voiced by famous people, such as Amy Poehler doing Joy, Bill Hader doing Fear, Louis Black doing Anger, and Mindy Kaling doing Disgust.
So she's from The Office, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things they have attached. What do you think about that, Alan?
You know what?
It's Pixar.
Yeah, even though I don't love all the Pixar films, I admire almost all the Pixar films except for the Cars movies. Really,
Which they keep making.
Cars and planes. There'll be trains and motorboats or something later. Who knows?
Motorboats.
That'll be the name of the next one. Motorboats.
You've just given them an idea for another one. You realize that,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Don't make motorboats, please. Other than the Cars movies, I think I respect everything that Pixar does.
Sure.
Even Brave, which you did not like.
No.
I thought was okay. I thought was good, and I thought was something different for them to try to do. So I'm willing to say, hey, lay it on me. Let's try it out. Let's see how it is. It sounds like it's a little more creative, a little more creativity infused concept than a bunch of talking cars driving around. So there again, I'm already feeling a little more upbeat about it than probably any other animated project you hear about coming up.
Well, and it sounds different, the fact that apparently you're going to have these like internal dialogues taking place in a kid's head, not an adult's head. So that's, I don't know, it sounds interesting.
I agree. I'm interested to see where it goes, for sure.
Okay, I've got one last little, this is kind of a quick news item from me. Do you have some as well?
I got one or two things I'll mention just to get some quick reaction on.
So we've talked in the past about biopics, okay? So I'm going to give you 2 biopics that are coming up and the actors playing them, and I want to see which one you'd rather spend your money on.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it.
Don Cheadle as Miles Davis or Andre 3000 as Jimi Hendrix. Okay, you like both of them are playing. You can only go see one. You have to go see one, maybe I should say.
Okay.
Which one are you most wanting to spend your money on?
I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Okay.
I'm going to say the Miles Davis film.
Okay.
For 2 reasons. One, Don Cheadle is an actor I trust.
Okay.
I'm not saying Andre, is it 2000 or 3000?
3000.
3000. I'm not saying Andre 3000 is not a great actor, but I don't know. And that would worry me playing somebody as iconic as Jimi Hendrix. Now, the main reason, though, I'm going to say the Don Cheadle film of Miles Davis, I've read that the producers of the Jimi Hendrix film could not get rights to all of Jimi Hendrix's most popular songs.
Oh, bummer.
So you're not going to hear him do the songs he's known for in the film.
Huh.
That's my understanding. If that's the case, that's why I say, yep, I'm going with the Miles Davis film.
I had not heard that.
That's what I've heard. Now, they are working on another Jimi Hendrix film that supposedly has got a bigger financer, bigger budget, and of course, they're going after all the song rights. But this one is a little more lower budget, and I think you're going to hear him play some songs that maybe were like B-sides on the albums or not as the popular songs, but you're not going to hear him do, Purple Haze or anything.
So you're making me think this is going to be Ashton Kutcher's Jobs as compared to whatever the Steve Jobs movie that's going to be coming out.
That's a very good way of looking at it. That's why I say, you know what, Don Cheadle, he's a big time actor. I'm sure it's a good, decent budget film, and they're going to pull out all the stops to do a good biopic. I'm like you. I'm not a huge fan of the biopic format, but I'm willing. I'm always willing to give it a shot, especially when it has to be about a musician's life. I do have an affinity towards films about musicians.
Sure.
Whether it's documentaries about bands, whether it's biopics of a performer or singer, I am drawn to those more than maybe sports figures or political figures or historical figures in any way. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, interesting.
Yeah.
I had to say that before you told me the news that you just shared with me about that. For some reason, Andre 3000 having been kind of out of the spotlight for a while, Outkast, the music group that he was associated with, kind of like broke up and stuff. They made a film called Idlewild, which I have never seen and have scoured the internet trying to find it. I would actually like to see it because I've heard some interesting things about it. But when I saw his name associated with Jimi Hendrix, I was like, So I was more interested in that, but I still want to see the Miles Davis one. So it's kind of where I thought.
Well, and I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I really do hope. I think Jimi Hendrix is a more fascinating character to watch a film about. If it's a well-made film and if Andre 3000 pulls off the acting chops, hey, that could be awesome. Even if it's not the Purple Haze songs and all that they're playing, I think it still could be a good film. I just, right away, I think more of the expertise lies on the Miles Davis side of the film, and that sounds like a little more of a sure bet for me right now.
Okay.
Well, let me just a couple of films really quick that are happening right now or they're talking about, and I thought, I might be interested, but kind of a follow-up to some films we've reviewed in the past.
Okay.
We promised ourselves we weren't going to talk about superheroes or Star Wars,
We've done good so far.
I'm keeping to it.
Okay.
I'm coming close with this one. We
mentioned Empire Strikes Back, but
we're coming close with this news item, but it's still not superheroes or Star Wars.
Okay.
Guillermo del Toro
okay.
Is going to make Pacific Rim 2.
Well, there we go.
And Chris is beaming with excitement.
Yeah.
I know you're not. I mean, I'm fine with it. I'm happy. I think you even asked me the question, would I be interested in seeing a sequel to Pacific Rim? And I said, sure. Yes, absolutely. I like the world. I like the setup that they have. So,
footnote.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know this or not, and I cannot tell you the name because he hasn't said the name. He is working on a black and white, independent, low budget film or something.
That's true.
Before Pacific. But I guess, and he's working on casting that one right now before he's going to do Pacific Rim 2.
He's pulling a Whedon.
He is, which, that makes me not excited for Pacific Rim 2, but excited for the fact that he's going to take the money that he made from Pacific Rim to do it. So
I don't know if he made tons from Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim did not exactly light the world on fire. Okay. It did okay. And I think internationally it did just good enough to warrant a sequel. But there for a while, pretty much everybody was talking about there's not going to be a sequel. So the fact that they did announce they are making one is kind of a surprise. But somebody's got a lot of confidence in that being a franchise at some point. So we'll see. But I did see about him making a very small, independent black and white film in between. I'd say sounds good to me.
Pulling a Whedon.
Pulling a Whedon. One more last note on another franchise, one that I have been hit or miss on, and I think you're mostly miss on. Mr. Cruise, Mr. Tom Cruise, Tommy, as I call him,
Tommy boy,
is surprise, surprise. They're working on a Mission Impossible 5.
Dude.
Yeah, I know. See, I said you were going to be mostly miss on this.
Yeah. Wow.
Supposedly,
I thought he was done with it because after the fourth one, wasn't he stepping away and
no
priming a Jeremy Renner?
Jeremy Renner. Here's the thing about Jeremy Renner. Jeremy Renner is being brought in to try to be the next reboot for franchises, and it's not working. Okay, he was brought in.
Can't kick out Tom Cruise.
He was brought into Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol as kind of another Mission Impossible agent or whatever they're called. And everybody thought, oh, this is a good chance for Jeremy Renner to be the next lead in this. And it didn't work.
And Tom Cruise keeps yelling from off screen, I'm not dead.
Yeah, I'm not dead. I'm still here. But they tried to pull the same thing with the Bourne franchise. They put Jeremy Renner in as the lead in the latest Bourne film, and it did not do very well at all. So now the rumors are that they're going back and getting Matt Damon to come back and play Jason Bourne again.
Oh, my gosh.
Jeremy Renner can't carry it.
Born Again.
Oh, we are on fire tonight, Chris.
Wow.
God, I hope all the Hollywood agents listening to this
just think
contact
of all the
us right
residuals
away.
We'll get
Born Again. It's perfect. Anyway, Mission Impossible 5. Christopher McQuarrie is directing it. Now,
did he do Charlie's Angels?
No. Christopher McQuarrie, the last film he did was also a Tom Cruise film, Jack Reacher.
Oh, I never saw that. So
I did not either. Yeah, so we can't pass judgment.
No.
That's our rule, is that if we haven't seen the film, we technically can't pass judgment on it. Unless it's Transformers.
Then we can badmouth that.
Then we can say whatever we want. Because I sat through enough of those other films, so I can talk badly about the new one. McQuarrie's more of a gritty action director.
Okay.
I think he did Live and Die in L.A. many, many years ago, and he's done some other. He's written a lot more than he's directed lately. So I do like the fact that each one of these Mission Impossible films is a different director. at least that gives it a shot to say, you know what, this could be different.
Okay.
I really, really liked Mission Impossible 3, which was J.J. Abrams.
I liked that, and it had Philip Seymour Hoffman.
It did. So it was really good. That was probably the best one of the 4, for sure. I liked the original one, which was Brian De Palma.
Okay.
It was confusing. It was a little muddied, but it was a good one. Now, the one that John Woo did, the number 2, was horrible.
Okay.
Ghost Protocol, I was let down by. It was not as good as everybody kept saying it was going to be, which was the guy who did the Iron Giant and the Incredibles. What's his name?
Brad Bird.
Brad Bird did number 4, Ghost Protocol. So, I like the fact when you keep changing up the directors, it just basically means that, hey, you don't have to worry about this being exactly like the last one. There's a chance it could be a different style to it. So, supposedly Jessica Chastain was going to be in Mission Impossible 5, which right away, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But then she passed on it.
Because she found out that it wasn't going to be Jeremy Renner. It was going to be Tom Cruise. She's like,
yes.
No, I meant to say I can't do that. No, sorry.
Yes, she is a Renner fanboy,
right.
And she wanted to be in a Jeremy Renner action movie. But supposedly Alec Baldwin is now going to be in this film, which, all right, whatever. You know what? We'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. But just wanted to pass that on because I knew you'd be terribly excited.
Okay, so McQuarrie's directing and Cruise is obviously Mr.
He's the lead. Yeah, I do think Jeremy Renner is back in it, but he's still not lead because I think everybody's scared to give Jeremy Renner the lead now.
Okay.
That's why Hawkeye was so underutilized in the Avengers movie.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, I think we hit enough news. What do you think?
I think that's good.
Okay, we've badmouthed enough people, talked about films that we have no intentions of seeing or ever wanting to see now. So let's move on to our recommendations. Okay. These are films that we think you ought to check out. They're either available online or you can look them up somewhere. It could be a recent film we've seen that we think we want to recommend. It can be something from the archives that maybe we've pulled back out. So, Chris, what have you got to share with us today? What's your recommendation of film for us?
I'm going to recommend a film that I think was at festivals in 2013, but was really released majorly in 2014, and that is the film Enemy, which we actually talked to, and it's a movie that has doppelgangers in it, and it's Jake Gyllenhaal, and he has a double in the movie, and it causes lots of problems. And we actually had talked about maybe reviewing this for the show, but instead we reviewed The Double with Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah, I got confused and I watched the wrong movie.
Well, you did. I thought this movie was much better.
Oh, really? So you liked Enemy better than The Double?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It comes down to the movie doesn't rely on so much visual style like The Double did. I felt like there was a lot of style there and not a lot of substance to the movie. This definitely has visual style, but it's very confusing. Mm-hmm. And actually, when I was checking back on movies I was going to review, I was like, oh yeah, Enemy, I like that. I should mention that one. So that's what I'm recommending. I can't wait to go back and see it again because I was picking up today some criticism about it, and they were talking about the movie's ending. Mm-hmm. And the movie's ending is very odd. It's not a last shot that you're going to forget. Like, even if you forgot the rest of the movie, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's the movie that ends with this happening. And they'll be like, yep. It's a very interesting movie talking about doppelgangers, but talking about like identity and who you think you are. And there's a lot of really bizarre imagery in the movie that has to do with spiders. There's a lot of references to spiders. And see the movie and then go online and try to look for some criticism, and they kind of link what they think the spider stuff means. And it's fascinating. So I can't wait to watch it again because I still like the movie, even though at the end I was kind of like, I'm not sure I understood really what was going on, but it still kept me involved. Well,
now I'm very interested. I'm glad I heard you talk about it.
We reviewed, what was the name of that movie? It wasn't Enemies. It was the previous director.
Prisoners.
Prisoners. It was like, it's not Enemies because this is Enemy. But Prisoners, by Denis Villeneuve, or however you say it. But
which I really liked that film.
Yeah, and it was kind of a tough watch because it's about people being children.
But it's a well-made film.
Well-made film. And I think I liked this film much better, and I thought it was not as heavy-handed as some of the moments in Prisoners were. So it's Enemy. It should be available on iTunes. It was when I watched it, at least. But I recommend it'll probably be coming out on DVD soon. So Enemy, check it out.
Okay. So you kind of talked about a more recent film. I'm going to go back in time a little bit, back to 1966. I finally got around to seeing a film that I'm sure many of our listeners have heard of, but I don't know how many have actually ever sat down and watched. It's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
I have heard of it.
Yeah, Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton.
Okay.
It's based on a stage play. I went into this film no familiarity with the story at all. I had never seen the play. I'd never seen this film. I've only heard about the title, and I knew that Elizabeth Taylor was in it. That was really all I knew about the film.
Okay.
Basically, what you have in this film, and I feel weird talking about what I know many people consider to be more of a classic. So I'm sure a lot of people listening have probably seen this film and know it, but I'm still going to describe it like plot-wise.
Sure.
Basically, we're following a very bitter old couple played by Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, who were, I don't know if they were married at the time. They were the ones that got married and remarried a couple times or something.
Right.
But they play an older couple. They play a little bit against type. Elizabeth Taylor is she's a little bit of a drunkard. She's very boisterous. She's loud. She's penetrating. She's biting. And then you've got Richard Burton playing George, the husband, who's snide, sarcastic, but also a little bit of a wimp. So they're both playing very, very different characters than what they traditionally are known to be in classic Hollywood. Mike Nichols is the director.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which I didn't realize that either until I sat down to watch the film. This is his first film.
Okay.
This is the guy who went on to make The Graduate. He went on to make Working Girl. He's still making films. Yeah, he made The Birdcage. Yeah, Closer, which I think is a really good film.
Yeah.
Mike Nichols, which actually Closer probably has more similarities to this film than a lot of his other films, style-wise, and some of the scenes that are just very tough to sit through. But what we basically have in this whole storyline is we follow this couple. They have another couple come over to visit them for drinks or to hang out after some sort of community event that took place. And this other couple is played by George Siegel and Sandy Dennis.
Okay.
And what follows is one of the most uncomfortable nights in this house, where you ever been in a situation where you go to someone's house and either the couple that invite you over, either they start fighting or there's just a lot of friction between them and it's very awkward and uncomfortable. Take that and multiply it by 50. And that's what this movie's all about. It's George Siegel as Nick and Sandy Dennis as Honey, his wife. And they're trying to navigate this whole evening with this couple and they can't leave. They get sucked in to the drama going on.
Wow.
And there's a lot more going on at the end of the film. You kind of realize that there's a certain thing that's happening between this married couple that's really exaggerating their emotions. I can't go into much more detail than that. It's a fascinating film to watch.
Okay.
Fascinating film, mainly because you've got two actors that are so well known in Hollywood for playing a certain role and having a certain persona, playing so opposite of it. It is a stage play on film, but yet there's enough visual things happening to keep you interested. So it's not like you're just watching a static stage play. Like sometimes you see, especially back in the 50s and 60s when they adapt a stage play, it looks like you're just watching the stage play just shot on camera.
Right.
This has got a lot of creative flourishes to it for sure. Acting wise, my understanding is all four actors in this film were nominated for Academy Awards.
Wow.
Which I think is one of the only times that's ever happened.
Okay.
All four of your only four characters in the whole film, all four nominated. And rightfully so too. They're all excellent, especially Sandy Dennis, who plays the wife of George Siegel's character. Starts out really weak and you don't think she's really playing a really good part. And then her part just goes crazy later on down a certain path. And for the time, for 1966, I can understand why this was a very controversial film.
Oh, okay.
The storylines that are followed, the language that's used at times, the mind games that are being played, the acting and display. It's a really, really interesting film. So Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I highly recommend checking out just because it's something you want to talk about afterwards.
Okay.
It's really something to talk about afterwards.
Okay, I'll have to find that because I've heard about it but never seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
It's one of those for me as well. I had only heard about it in passing, but I couldn't have told you what it was about. So, and Mike Nichols, it just solidified to me that, the guy's a really solid director and has been for 50 years now. So, okay. Wow. A lot of good stuff we covered in today's episode. A lot of good films to check out. Chef, Life Itself, How to Train Your Dragon 2, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Enemy, and then we talked about some other films that are coming down the pike that may also be good, like Pacific Rim 2.
Right.
And Mission Impossible 5.
Right.
So we really packed you in with a lot of good ideas for films and a lot of things to check out. We will be back next time as we review some more films, both new ones and some recommendations as well that you ought to check out. We encourage you, though, in the meantime, go check out the Mesh.tv website. And Chris, what can they do there? What should they do? How can they interact with us going forward?
Well, you can, if you check out the Mesh website, there's opportunities there to send an email to info@themesh.tv.
Okay.
And, kind of mention you're wanting to talk about Footcandle.
Yep.
And that'll get to us. Otherwise, you can also follow Alan and I on Letterboxd.
Yes.
And that lets you know kind of like other movies we might see on the sidelines or older movies that we may, write a little bit of a review of. Mm-hmm. So those are ways you can keep up with us. Also, there's footcandle.org, which is the website for our film society.
Yeah. A lot of different ways to connect with us, a lot of ways to stay online with us. And we really just appreciate you listening. We do encourage you to go back and check out any episodes you missed. If there's certain films you're curious about, or maybe ones that were in theaters months ago are now starting to hit iTunes or online, go back and listen to the review after you've seen the film and write us a note. Let us know if we were right or wrong in your opinion.
Speaking of iTunes,
yes.
Here's the thing. These episodes, obviously if you're listening to it, they're free. So
yes.
how,
we haven't figured out how to charge you for them yet.
You're sitting there wondering, how can we pay Alan and Chris back for all of their hard work? Well, here's the thing. You can just rate us on iTunes.
Rating. Yeah.
Doesn't cost anything,
True.
Just give us a, we'd prefer for you to give us a nice rating, but just give us a rating.
Just give us an honest rating. We'll take it. We're big boys. We can handle it. You're right. The star rating, and we're not just saying that from a self-serving standpoint. It's really more a matter of, it does help us get recognized by other people that are looking for podcasts to check out.
There you go.
The more star ratings we have, the more possibility other listeners might be able to check it out and listen to. And of course, the more listeners we have, the more we can do, the more episodes, all that good stuff. So it's just a nice self-perpetuating thing we're trying to do here.
There you go.
Great. Well, again, this has been Footcandle Films. My name is Alan. You've been listening to Chris as well. And we'll look forward to talking to you next time.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.